Over the last few years, van life has become massive, and if you think about it, it's no wonder. It ticks every single box of YouTube or Instagram's algorithms. It's what van life says about you that makes it perfect for social media. It says my life is adventurous, my van is aesthetic. It says I'm doing something different, and all of this makes for perfect, aesthetic, individual, viral content. So combine this with just a young, fit couple in love, and you have literally the perfect Instagram reel. Now, that might be a very cynical take on a pretty cool space in my opinion, so please take that with a pinch of salt. In this video, I want to give an honest opinion, not on van life, but on converting a van. Another process that is massively idolized or romanticized on social media. The spoiler alert is that actually building a van is really, really hard and not very fun at points.
Who's going to say the bad news?
Oh dear. I'm Dan, I'm a junior doctor currently living and working in the UK, and today I want to talk to you about my van build. So starting with a bit of background, growing up, myself, my family, we went on holidays in the UK to West Wales or Pembrokeshire. It's the western coast and it's absolutely stunning. So this is where really my love or my passion for the outdoors came from. You can kayak, you can surf, you can swim, spend all day at the beach, you can hike, there's lots of nature, we've seen whales there, we've seen dolphins, puffins, everything. So my interest in the outdoors kind of stemmed from there. And then somewhere along the way, myself and my brother really sort of got interested in van life. But anyway, that's where sort of my interest in the space came from. And then 2022 rolled around and I just worked, two pretty grueling years working in the pandemic as a junior doctor. Hadn't travelled at all, and I thought, this is the year. I'm going to pull the trigger. I'm going to finally buy a van and convert it. So armed with thousands of hours of YouTube van builds, hundreds of van tours, and a couple of books that I'd read on how to build a van, I decided that I had gained enough experience in DIY and building to take on this project. And unfortunately, I was wrong. So initially my motivation was pretty high. I bought this van, I was absolutely buzzing. It was the most I'd ever paid for anything. I bought a 2017 Peugeot Boxer. It had a long wheelbase and I wanted to be able to stand up in the van, so that was important to me. I had sensibly decided that I wasn't going to do any mechanical fixing, so I bought a fairly new van. It had 40,000 miles on the clock, and this also meant that it had a Euro 6 engine, which importantly meant that it was exempt from ULEZ or ultra low emission zone charges in London.
See what Grandad's doing. Oh, We lost some weight, Grandad.
Yeah.
Anyway, I cracked on. First job was cleaning. So this had been an old Thai street food company's van, and they'd used it basically to transport all their equipment. So there was just loads of grease. It was absolutely grim. However, I had a lot of help with my family initially, and we were lucky enough to have a lot of space down at my grandparents' in Wales. So I'd often drive down there and work there for a week on the van. So the next jobs were things like the swivel seat, treating any rust, sound deadening, which means that it's not as noisy when you're driving it around or when you're in the van itself. And then sealing the trims and insulating. So I started ticking off a few of these jobs, but a couple of things started to dawn on me as I did that. The first thing was time. Everything took so much longer than I thought it was going to. All of these jobs were really little, and essentially all the tutorials I'd seen on YouTube, they just sort of glossed over this initial part. And actually it took me so long, honestly taking maybe 5 times as long as I was expecting. After that, if you factor in a few errors here and there, then I quickly found myself spending days ticking off what should be very small jobs. Sealing the trims was an absolute nightmare job, so you have to do this in order to protect your insulation from becoming wet. So there's these little holes behind the plastic, and you need to make sure there's a sealant trim. In hindsight, I wasn't doing this very well. I was using way too much sealant, but I actually got the whole thing wrong and essentially had to undo a couple of days of work, which I put on my Instagram.
That doesn't work.
And that was a great example of how difficult this job was and how much I'd underestimated it. I recovered from that, but the next thing I started noticing was the cost. I'd been sensible enough to have the window, the fan and the skylight installed, as well as the deadlocks by professionals. So I wasn't going anywhere near cutting holes in my van, which in hindsight was a brilliant shout, well done to me. But everything started adding up and it was so expensive. After buying a £15,000 van, I didn't have loads of money. I wasn't keen to go into any debt over this, so I had to start working more. I was locoming and started having to pick up more shifts in order to get more money to then spend on the van. At this point, it was the summer of 2022. I had honestly thought that by August, which is when I started my GP training, I was going to be maybe about halfway through the van build. Anyway, in reality, I was about 5 to 10% done in the van. I started my GP training. I was on acute medicine, then A&E, and was now working sort of 40 hours a week on a full on-call rota. So the van kind of became now this topic that I really didn't want to think about. Coming back to the Instagram thing, for some reason in my head I'd really built it up that I had to build the van. I'd seen so many people do it online, they'd made it look so easy, but I felt like I was failing if I had any help, or I just didn't feel great about the van. I didn't want to talk about it. It became a topic of contention and actually started stressing me out quite a lot. All of this probably came to a head when I had built quite a good frame around the fan that I'd had put in professionally. However, it started dripping, and then I was left with a big snowfall the next week in London. And so I was very aware that the van was becoming more and more damp. There was starting to get some like mold on the front seat, and this was just starting to stress me out now. So this all sounds very doom and gloom, and woe is me. I just want to like give an honest overview of at points how I felt. I have actually learned loads and enjoyed parts of the van build. I have not got any DIY skills, and actually I'm pretty impressed that I managed to get it to look the way I did. It was really cool, and I definitely have some skills now that, you know, I didn't have, but equally I don't want to dumb down how expensive and how time consuming it really was. God, anyone that's done a van build, respect. It's a lot of work. So then, being realistic, I felt like I had two options. So either I just quit my job and just spend 3 to 6 months working full time on the van. Second option was I carried on working and essentially had someone else do it. When I thought about that, as much as in my head I wanted to finish this van build because I said I was going to do it, I realised that I didn't enjoy building the van that much. Yeah, I just didn't want to do it. So essentially, we're now in 2023. It is a year on since I built the van. To be honest, I'm pretty happy with the work that I've actually managed to do. After sort of battling with my ego, I've now dropped the van off in Cambridge with my friend Rob, who's kindly gonna finish off the van. I certainly wasn't gonna finish off that project. I have documented some of my van build on my Instagram, Dan Builds Van, which is now incorrectly named, but we'll come to that at some point when the van is done. Hopefully I will also start posting some van content on there once it's done, so that will probably be later in the summer. If you're into the medical side of things, I'm on TikTok, have a look there, and if you're into sort of everything else, then just stick around on YouTube, subscribe. If you've done a van build, I'd like to hear from you in the comments, so please let me know. Cheers.
So I think I forgot to check the path of the saw.
We have a job sticking nose like the